All right. So I am D.L. Golden.
I'm SF Rogers, and this is the Author's Chaos, and we're super excited today. We have Liz Shipton with us.
How's it going, Liz?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing good. As always, guys, we are not professionals. Anything we say on this is not like advice to take to heart, just giving our personal opinion and talking to people and trying to build community here. So we're very excited to talk to you, Liz, and I guess we'll just start in with our first question here. So tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a freelance writer and indie author, and I'm also a full-time off-grid liveaboard sailor. So I live on a sailboat with my boyfriend and my dog, and we have been sailing full-time since the end of 2021, so almost 2 years now. We left our home in California, and we sailed down the Pacific coast of the United States, through Mexico, through Central America. We came through the Panama Canal in March of this year, and we're now in Colombia, actually, in Cartagena. And during that time, I have been writing books, dystopian sci-fi books based on, kind of really, really heavily based on my life and also my sailing adventures.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
It's wild. How does one throw everything off and just go to sailing around the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny. People ask me this question, and there is a lot of advice out there that says, like, don't, just go. You just have to go and you just have to do it. And like, that is true. There is an element of that for sure. But to be completely honest, it took about 5 or 6 years of planning and saving and, kind of working towards this goal to make it happen. So I would say, you just have to really, really want to do it and make it your priority and make it your focus, and then work for it. And then at a certain point, yes, you do just kind of have to go.
Just do it. Just do the dang thing.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a very cool thing to do. It's very fascinating. We haven't talked to anybody in that situation yet,
No, never. And I think the first question that I have is, like, do you wake up in a different place? Like, are you guys anchored somewhere? Or are you just kind of sailing and you wake up to a new horizon in the morning?
It depends. So we spend a lot of time anchored. So right now I'm actually, my boyfriend Trev is not on the boat right now. He's actually back in the States helping his family with something. So I'm actually in a marina, like at a dock in Cartagena, like right in the city, which is nice because it's easy to walk the dog and I can get groceries really easy. But there's other times when we are anchored at, like a super remote island off the coast of Panama, or anchored like in Baja off the Pacific coast of Mexico. And so it's the great thing about this is you can have the best of both worlds, right? Like I've been in Cartagena for almost 2 months now, I think. But, there's other times where we will quickly move from place to place. We'll be kind of at sea sailing for like 2 or 3 straight days to get to a new place or whatever. So it's a mix of both. Sometimes at anchor, sometimes sailing. Yeah.
That's super, super cool.
That is really neat. So you said you're a freelance writer and you've written a couple of things already, or dystopian stories. What do you have?
So I, up until this point, I have actually been supporting us, making all my money through freelance writing. I used to be a software engineer, so I write like technical articles about software, and that's kind of how I make our money. And then I have also written so far 5 books in my dystopian series, which are all out currently and available on Amazon. And actually, this is kind of funny. Over the last 2 days, I have a spicy version of my series and a clean version of my series. So, to be full disclosure, the spicy version of the series, in the last couple days, I had some like kind of crazy major success on TikTok, and it just sort of took off in a big way. It's now like this morning, it's #1 and like in the top 10 for all the categories that it's in, which is insane.
Get it.
Yeah, I'm like very excited / terrified because like I don't really know what's going to happen now. I'm like waiting for a lot of negative reviews to start coming in and just trying to like brace myself for that.
Right.
So my goal is, ultimately to sort of replace my freelancing income with income from the books. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm sort of like on the way there.
Right.
That is really cool.
So how long have you been writing?
I think about 2 years now. I pretty much started like when we set off on this trip. Because I never had time. It's always been something I wanted to do, like many people. And I never had time when I was working like literally 20-hour days at my coding job. And so one of my big motivators for for doing this trip and for choosing this lifestyle and for getting on the boat was that I knew it would give me sort of the freedom in terms of having time to write. So I've been writing pretty much as long as we've been on the boat.
That's cool.
That is really, really neat. So you've put out 5 books in 2 years then.
I actually, yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a lot.
Because I have time, right? Like a lot of book 1 was written on my phone in the middle of the night, like while I was on watch, while we were like sailing down the coast. It took me probably a year to write book 1, and then it took me like probably a year to write the rest of the books. And I'm currently writing book 6, and I think I'm going to get it done in a month, but I'm like pushing myself very hard to make that happen because I see that people are sort of liking the series, and now I'm like, okay, it's got to go.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a dream, isn't it, to be able to just shut everything else down and you can say, okay, I'm going to write this stuff full time and do what I actually enjoy doing. That's really awesome.
I have so much envy in my heart right now because I'm in my first draft of my first book and I'm like, holy crap, she's getting 18 books published in 2 years. Like, what in the world is happening?
Oh, I mean, so I have 2 versions of my series out. So technically there's 10 books, but really it's 5 books because it's 2 versions of the same book.
Ma'am, you are my hero. I'm just gonna throw that into the universe. Like that is a universal thing now. Like, oh my goodness.
It's impressive that you've made up 2 different versions of your books though. So did you make the more adult content one first and then you've gone back and pared it down to make it more accessible to other audiences, or
actually I went the other way. So I wrote a YA dystopian book first because that was sort of like, when I think about the books that I love, it was like Hunger Games, Divergent, like back from those days. So that was what I wrote first. And then so when I first started writing, I hated romance. I did not want romance in my books at all.
Sounds familiar.
And then throughout the course of writing book 1 and doing research in the genre and sort of reading a lot more, I was like, okay, if I'm going to write a YA dystopian book, people kind of expect there to be romance in there. So I wrote a clean romance and was like, oh, that was kind of fun, actually. I didn't hate that. So then I was like, well, what would happen if I wrote some spicy bonus scenes? And like my intention really was just to write these, like a few bonus scenes and sort of release them to readers, whoever wanted them, as bonus content. But then I just put them into the books, and I liked how the books read with the scenes included. So I decided to just throw the series up. I released the whole Spicy series on the same day, on June 1st, because I had all the books written already. Yeah. And I just threw it up on Amazon. I made my own covers. And I sort of just threw it up like, Hail Mary, I don't know what's going to happen with this. Let's see how it goes. And people seem to like it. So yeah,
that is really awesome. Congratulations.
Yes. Congratulations on that. That's so cool.
Thanks. It's been a weird, wild ride.
I don't know. I think the word I'm thinking of is like kismet. Like you just had an idea and you went with it, and it's just like fate was like, yep, this was the right decision. Like this was the thing.
It's been honestly really scary for like the last 2 years, because I mean, when you start writing, you have no idea if anyone's gonna like what you write, right? Or if anyone's
Right.
going to connect with it or people are going to think you're weird. I also put a lot of myself into these books. Like the main character is me, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so to put that out there and just be like, here's literally everything about me. I hope you guys like it. Was terrifying. And it only now in the last, I mean, honestly, like few weeks have I started to feel like, okay, maybe there's something here and like maybe this works. I'm still not sure. It could still go horribly sideways and people could hate it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm starting to feel like maybe it's going all right.
Right. DL and I have had that conversation. Like you're looking at your manuscript and you're like, this is 96,000 words of me.
Yeah.
That's getting ready to go out to all of these people. Like when I sent my first manuscript out, right? Like super rough. I know it's rough. And I just remember I messaged him and I was like, hey, so I feel like I'm dying. My baby just went out to all these people. What if they come back and they hate it? And he's like, you can start over. And I'm like, but it's 96,000 words.
Yeah. Totally.
So we totally get that. Like it's your heart, right? Like you create the characters, you create the space. Right. Like it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I think part of what people maybe like about it is because it's so like honest, right? Like you have to put yourself into your work. Like it's coming from your own brain and your own heart, you know, like there's no way it's not going to be you. Right. But I think people like people, right? And they connect to people. So
for sure,
the more of you is in your book, the better.
It's something about that relatability, I think. I mean, you could write whatever characters you want, but if people can't relate to them, if people can't see them as actual people, you're not going to get anybody interested in stuff. And so I think, pouring yourself into it's an inevitability, and I think that's what makes a good character a good character. Mm-hmm. So we were gonna ask what your current release is about, but you have so many. So can you give us a rough summary of what your story
series
is? Yeah, what your series is about.
Totally, yeah. So the series is set in a futuristic dystopian water world where basically climate change and pandemics have rendered the world like uninhabitable, essentially. Most of the world is covered in water, and then there's like a few pockets that are still habitable where people can live. The only way to get around the world really is by sailboat. So the main character, who's kind of a train wreck, she's like in the new adult version, in the spicy version, she's like 18, 19. She is struggling with some alcohol abuse and some mental health issues. She basically is just kind of a reckless asshat that like just gets herself into trouble and makes a lot of really terrible decisions. And through her terrible decision making, she and her sailing instructor, who's like 2 years older than her, end up having to flee their hometown by sailboat and sailing across this like really dangerous dystopian water world, basically. They meet pirates and they rescue a dog and they bring down like an evil biotech corporation and they save the world and they fall in love and, you know, all that.
That sounds like a series for me. I'm just saying.
It sounds really, really interesting.
It's fun.
So you said biotech. So do you also kind of dabble in the science fiction? Like,
yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely it's like, I've started calling it dystopian fantasy, which I've seen that term kind of like popping up around everywhere recently. So it's sci-fi. Like book 3 for sure gets like pretty sci-fi. There's some talk of like quantum mechanics and Fermat's principle and like things like that. But there's also like fantasy elements. So like there's pirates, there's sailing, you know, there's sword fights. It's sort of a very weird mix of like this, you know, futuristic biotech dystopia with pirates. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense.
It sounds like you've had a hard time throwing it into a category, like saying this is my genre.
Yes, it's very much a weird cross genre. Like so I'm like right now I'm calling it a new adult dystopian fantasy, which is not really a thing. So I'm kind of hoping I can make it a thing. I don't know.
Right?
We'll see how it goes.
See, I get that with my book Origins. It is very much science fantasy. It's a fantasy story, but it is heavily rooted in sci-fi come the end of the story. And so I get it. Being like, oh, well, it's this is really hard to do. Nailing down what your story is for people to actually look it up and find it is such a difficult thing after you've worked so hard on it. So I definitely get it.
When he released his book, I had been asking him, so like, what's the premise? What's this thing? And he's like, well, I don't want to spoil it for you. So I buy the book, right? And I get to the plot twist and I called him and I was like, sir, I was not prepared. What is happening right now? And he's like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, you don't get to apologize. Like, explain yourself. And he's like, well, it's a science fantasy. And I was like, I get that now. You could have told me that.
It's like, it's not like a thing, so it's hard.
It's not.
It's hard to throw out there, but I get it. I understand the complexity of that. So you're not alone. I promise.
Yeah, I feel like I'm seeing sort of this blend of like science and fantasy happening, maybe more and more. I don't know. I mean, I'm like pretty new to the scene, I guess. So I don't know if it's been around for a long time, but I like it.
I think that I've noticed, especially with more people going indie publishing instead of traditionally publishing books, we're seeing a lot more crossovers of genres where there's not so many so much red tape where like, okay, you can't have this and this in the same book. We're seeing a lot more people who are like, it's vampires set in the West and they ride horses. Like, you know, you get the Western vampires or you get the science fantasy stuff. So I definitely think people breaking out on their own and not trying to stay so much in a traditional published lane has helped open a lot of the genres up to more interpretation and people are letting their daydreams just go.
Yeah, which is great.
Awesome. It creates awesome stories.
So talking about traditional indie publishing, why did you decide to go indie for your publishing? I'm assuming it's because
because I queried the book and I just got rejected a bunch. Basically,
I'm so sorry.
Whatever. I mean, like I think that's a story for a lot of indie authors. I didn't try to query all that hard, to be fair and to be honest. Like, I gave it, I think, 6 months, and then I'm very impatient, and I just wanted to get it out there. And like, I think there's value in having your book out there just to know if it works, right? Like, just to know if people even like it, rather than spending years and years polishing this manuscript so that you can query it, and then maybe nobody likes it. To me, it seemed better, and I think this is coming from sort of a tech mindset, is this idea of like MVP, which is minimum viable product. Like, just get the thing out there, get it into readers' hands, get feedback on it, and start iterating and making changes. The book that I have now, book 1 of the series that I have now, is very different from the book that I queried to trad publishers a year ago. So maybe if I queried it again, they'd take it, but I sort of highly doubt it. And right now this seems to be working, so I'll just keep going this way. I also really like that I can literally do whatever I want. Like, I have a clean version and a spicy version. That may not continue to work, forever, but for now it does. And I get to do that because I'm indie.
And you're making your own decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And I get to go, I get to go be on TikTok and be as unhinged as I am, and like, no one can tell me not to.
Right.
Right. And it's got to be hard. I didn't query my book at all. I just straight indie published it because I did not have it in me to get rejected on it over and over and over again. But for it to be a story based around your adventures around the world, your life, I can't even imagine querying it and then being like, oh, this isn't good enough.
This story is awful. And you're like, well, it's me. So
it's my story. Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's funny. I guess in a previous life, many, many years ago, I was a musical theater and actor person. So I went on a lot of auditions and I got rejected a lot. And I think maybe I got just used to accepting rejection. I am, like I said, really terrified of the negative reviews that I know are coming to me at some point. I'm just not going to read them, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always a mentality, and I'm a teacher, and there's always a mentality of whenever you get feedback in any way, shape, or form, it's always a chance to grow and become better. So it's always a good mentality, even in this sense, to keep in mind that if you get negative feedback, use it to grow and change stuff, but don't change your work to not get the negative feedback from people. You're gonna get it no matter what. So I just I say whatever they say it's the internet. You know, they weren't born to be nice anyway. So what's right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh gosh, what? I don't even know. So I'll go ahead and ask what's a piece of advice that you received or you've seen that's like a piece of advice that you would stand by, or like the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
I would say the piece of advice that I see all the time and I really have taken to heart is that the best way to promote your current book is to write the next book. And I think that, like, at its core, really what that advice is saying is that you just have to write. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it comes down to. You know, like there's so much that you have to do to be an indie author with the marketing and the social media and the editing and the covers and all of this stuff. But if you're not writing, right, at its foundation, you're building a house that's going to fall down.
Right.
So, you know, and the best way to get better at writing is to just write. Like, having written 5 books now, I'm writing book number 6 and I'm like, God, this is so much better than book 1. And now I need to go back and like rewrite the whole series because, you know, like I'm so much better now. So yeah, you just write. The best way to promote your book is to write another book.
I find it so interesting that you say that, because that's advice that we have had to give each other. There are 4 of us in our family that are writers. And it's always just sit down and do it. If it comes out as trash the first time, you can go back and fix it. But you need to get it down on paper in the first place. And I guess the thing is, how many times in life is it that you just have to sit down and pull the trigger and do the thing? You know, I mean, you did it with moving out on a ship and sailing around the world. You've done it with your books here. It just happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. You just have to do it ultimately. And like, I honestly hate writing the first draft. It's so hard. I love editing. I love going back to something like a chapter I've already written and reading through it and being like, God, I'm so amazing. Look at how beautiful this is. But then, like,
we need to have that
right, that mentality.
Or alternately sitting there and just going like, oh, this is garbage. Like, who wrote this? This is so awful. But like, either way, then you get to like polish and you get to kind of chip away and you get to put in all the beautiful words and you know, you really like get to shape the thing and sculpt it and make it beautiful. That's my favorite part, honestly. Writing the rough draft is like walking up a mountain. Like,
right.
You have just given me a perspective change, because I just finished going through like my rough draft. And I literally dreaded every single second, because I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to do. But if I would have looked at it like, look how brilliant I am, because there were chapters where I literally messaged the group chat and I was like, do I even know English? Like, do I know English? Because this doesn't make sense. What did I write?
Yeah.
So thank you for that perspective change. I definitely needed that.
It's a roller coaster, right? You're either you're a genius or you're trash, and there's no in between.
Yes.
Well, and I don't think the imposter syndrome of writing at all ever goes away, and so that doesn't help. You know, you're 6 books in. Do you feel like an author at this point?
No, God, no. No, of course not. And like, I mean, I struggled with this, you know, I mentioned I was a software engineer, but I came to software engineering through a very roundabout, weird path where I taught myself a little bit and then I went through a boot camp. And then I spent 5 years in tech, and every single second of that 5 years, I felt like an imposter. And I mean, it didn't go away. And I kind of thought, you know, leaving tech and doing something where I felt like I knew what I was doing would help. And it hasn't at all. Like, I still feel that way every day. So I don't know if that's, I don't know what to make of that, really.
I think it's everyone we've talked to has been like, yeah, there are days where I really question Like who I am
Yeah.
fundamentally as a person. Like, am I really? No,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, year 6 of teaching, I'm like, oh, I've had over 100 students. That is not good for the future. But, you know, it is what it is, you know, so, I mean,
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
exactly.
Do you have another question?
I don't know. I mean, it has been absolutely amazing talking to you, Liz. You're a really good interviewee, I will say that.
Oh, thanks.
You've been
You know,
big.
I
Go
just
ahead.
think these are really fun. I've been trying to kind of get myself onto some indie podcasts and just, it's fun for me. Like, I enjoy chatting to people and talking about my weird life, and
Well, and building a community of people who are indie authors that can support each other is extremely important to us. And I think it's extremely important to the community as a whole, because a lot of us don't have a lot of support in that sense, you know? So it's very good to have all these people that are like, yeah, I want to come on and talk about this. And then it's out in the world where people can come and listen to all these great stories.
Well, and we got very lucky. Like we said, there's 4 of us. We call ourselves the Runaway Daydreamers. We have a website, all that stuff. But like, we have seen on TikTok that there's so many authors out there who don't have, like, they don't have a community. They don't have people to reach out to on a rough day when your villain, you know, kills a character and you're like, oh my whole life is over. What am I going to do? Like, we have that. And we wanted, essentially starting the Author's Chaos was because it is pretty chaotic to be creating a world or creating these stories. And sometimes you come out of a chapter or two and you're like, I really need to talk about what just happened.
yeah.
And I need someone who understands that I am not crazy.
Totally.
So that's what we're wanting to do. And we're really, really glad you reached out. Like,
Yeah.
it's cool. I like having you in our group now. You're like part of it.
Yay! That's great. Because to be completely honest, you know, we live on this boat. We live very remotely. It can definitely get lonely. Like, especially we're in foreign countries, and I speak decent Spanish, but like, it can for sure, especially when we're in remote places, be a little lonely, like traveling all the time. So I have been leaning hard into like the book talk community and Facebook groups, and just finding people that I can connect with online, because there's nobody out here in Colombia writing indie books that I've met. I'm sure there are, actually. I should try to find them. I'll go do that.
So I have to ask, you found us on TikTok, yeah?
Yes.
So were you in Colombia when you found us? So our TikToks are reaching much further than we're at, clearly.
Well, so I use TikTok through a VPN, and I have a US SIM card. So I am very carefully trying to make sure that my content serves in the United States and that I see content from the United States.
Okay.
It's possible I could find out for you. I can put it up. I can pull it up on my boyfriend's phone or something like that.
I was just curious. I thought it was really interesting that you reached out to us and you're so far away. We are in Missouri right now, which, I mean, we're in the middle of the United States, right? So nowhere near the ocean. And I just found it so fascinating that you reached out like that. So I just wanted to know.
Yeah, I mean, the world is a crazy place now, right? Like, it's, everyone can just talk like this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's great. Well, I think we're coming to an ending here. Where can people find you, Liz?
Yeah, okay. So I have a website, lizshipton.com. I'm very active on TikTok. You can find me at Liz Shipton Author. I have a Facebook page, at Liz Shipton Author. And if people would like to follow our sailing adventures, there's an Instagram account specifically for that, which is SV_Loki, which is the name of our boat. And then, you can find the series on Amazon. Book 1 of the series is called Salt, and it is a new adult dystopian romance.
And we will have you send us the links, and we'll post it in the description so everybody can find you.
Yeah, any links at all.
Any links at all that you want to throw on there, just email them to us.
And we'll send it out. So
sounds good.
This has been The Author's Chaos. It's been great talking to you, Liz.
Where can they find your book?
My book, Origins, available on Amazon by D.L. Golden. Still there, still just what it was. So
I don't have a book yet, but you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Facebook.
I'm also all those places.
TikTok, all the things.
Yeah. Threads. I'm on that now too, actually.
Hey, we should follow each other. That should be a thing.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for tuning in.